thing about composing is that it entails so much, both from obviously the actual writing of the music, but then also the kind of brainstorming around it and the kind of the thought process, if you will, and the architectural build of a piece. And so for me, when I start a piece, it really begins, in this case, with a collaboration and with a seed of an idea that a person brought to me that then I could kind of, take and think, okay, well, what do I have to bring to this? And structurally, how would I actually dive into this? And thematically, what are the things that, that I want to work with? And then, on the kind of grander scale of being a composer, what am I working on right now in terms of my own music and its own trajectory and the things that I want to discover? So, writing music is all these things. It's the collaboration with the other artist and the world that opens. It's the kind of infrastructural build. And then of course it's the sitting down and what emerges and the craft of actually transforming that into a work. And then often the piece doesn't end when you hear it premiered, because there's then the further kind of, oh, well, this is what it actually sounds like. And, and you begin to hear things in a different way, which is why it's always so important to have more than one performance. The hardest part of writing, and I think this is probably the same for many composers, is the beginning. It's the kind of assembling of everything, because you're really creating something out of abstraction. And then slowly the piece begins to emerge into itself, and then often you get into a state of flow and the piece feels like at that point like it's written itself. So usually by the time I've written that bar line at the end, there's a feeling that what needed to be said has been explored, that it's been trimmed, that it's been nurtured, that it's become itself. But then, the truth is it's not done, because you really, until a piece is recorded and you really have like kind of, explored with the artist, or in this case, an artist plus an orchestra, so many artists, till you had that kind of luxury of actually hearing something multiple times, you're really not done in the way with that kind of refining process. And so I feel very lucky when I am able to, actually get to record a piece, or to, to really hear it many times, or in the best of case of scenario, hear it from different artists, because then you're also hearing different interpretations. So a piece isn't always done when you hit that bar line, but sometimes it is. Sometimes you send off a piece and that's your contribution. I like to be involved, obviously, in the kind of creation and curation, meaning the context, meaning the evolution after it's done. I like to write large scale work, and I often work, for example, in opera or in large multimedia structures. And so there, you need obviously to have your own voice, and it's imperative that you kind of, you're bringing a holistic sense of artistic self to a collaboration. But then the truth is you're creating something that's really the sum of, many parts. And so I find that that kind of also becomes a well-oiled machine when you get into a collaboration that's a really rich collaboration. It's often multi-year, it becomes part of your family. You're essentially creating an art form together. And that's in these kind of hybrid innovative projects. But I think the collaboration is also between musician and composer. Like in this instance, I'm writing for Lara. And so, what do I love about the way she plays? What does she bring into the collaboration? How is she contextualizing this in her curation? And so there's just, many different layers to a collaboration, and it can go very deep. Or it can, it could just be, different kind of interpretations of that collaboration. And it's all very interesting, and there's a lifetime of them. So I tend to enjoy whatever collaboration I'm in, because I know I'm learning something and evolving as an artist. I would say that each piece is kind of a different adventure and a different journey. And so often it's kind of tackling something societal, or, something emotional or something within me that I want to understand. And that can range from kind of, deep topics, like right now an opera that I'm writing that's based on understanding the intersections of disability and artificial intelligence, and, the idea of everyone having voice. So that's a really multi-year project that kind of goes, really from, deep kind of scientific study to collaborative study to then opera writing and community impact. And then, you know, if I were to look at it musically, like really descriptively musically, I would say that there's a sense of warmth and of intricacy. There's often, you know, a lot of kind of melodic propulsion that's then deconstructed, sometimes electronic worlds. Um, yeah, and so that kind of creates, I think, a sense of a unique world for each project that one is entering into, but always with my voice. So, do I ever write for myself? Yes, I do. And I would say that during quarantine, it's been kind of how I've kept healthy. You know, my bigger projects all were stalled. And, you know, while I still obviously have timelines for them, it was harder to imagine just because I was dealing with a really different reality all of a sudden. And then, of course, with everything going on in the world and, you know, what's happening in America right now, your mind and your heart is consumed. And you're trying to be active but listening and, you know, maintain a sense of active hope. And so in order to do that, you know, personally, I was fortunate to have just a few kind of very small collaborations that became really healing to me, you know, with friends who I love, people I admire. So, for example, my husband, who's a great cellist, Jeffrey Ziegler, and I have never released an album together. So all of a sudden, you know, we're like, oh, great, like let's release an album. So we've been working slowly on that. I have a dear friend who lives in Mexico City and who's a wonderful singer named Magos Herrera, and she and I are recording and actually collaborating in isolation. And then a friend named Maria Popova, who has a beautiful site named Brain Pickings, and we did a collaboration with a choir in isolation. So all these things kind of really trying to think about this moment in time and how music and our own emotions and our music become an artifact of a time that, you know, that's very singular. Gosh, no. I mean, I would like to say I do, but often, you know, when you listen back to your music, there's like a honeymoon period, then there's a period where like, oh, I could have done that so much better, and you know, so it's a very emotional relationship. So I tend to just look forward. I mean, I'm quite self-critical in the process, and then once I've, you know, put down, you know, the pen, so to speak, then it's like, okay, you know, what's next? And I think that also keeps me sane because otherwise one can, you know, self-critique to death. But I have pieces that I'm proud of for sure, and they tend to be the last ones I've written. So I guess the very last piece I wrote was a piece for the New York Philharmonic. It was a small piece based on the life of Rachel Carson with Maria Popova, and that was just a beautiful exploration, you know, of this incredible woman at the moment that she really Silent Spring into the world. And so between the kind of live electronics, the fixed electronics, and the voice, it was for Lucy DeGray. It was just a wonderful experience, and I'm proud of that piece. I would be a writer. So not a writer of sound, but a writer of words if I were good. Um, I like creating something out of nothing, and I like the kind of journey of, you know, also being in control of a world, you know, and that intimacy, um, and that creativity, I can only imagine if it weren't in sound to be in words. And it's my second passion. So not writing, but reading. So yeah, a writer of anything, as long as I can be a writer.